August 1948 brought to Britain a period of climatic fury after 6 days of excessive rain, followed on August the 12th by a torrential downpour. 1,000 square miles of the Scottish border country were inundated to an extent which proved disastrous. The severe flooding brought a series of major catastrophes to British railways. Slips, collapsed bridges, landslides wrecked a 30-mile stretch of the East Coast main line to Edinburgh. On that Black Friday, August the 13th, all rail communication between Berwick and Dunbar was halted. But the floodwaters rushed on, trailing devastation in their wake, sparing nothing and nobody. Industry and homes alike were wrecked. Crops were ruined. The damage could be estimated in millions. The local people had work to do, a great job to restore conditions to normal, a job they tackled cheerfully. Our story is the story of British railways, who similarly were faced with problems of gigantic proportions. British Railways announced the main East Coast line to Edinburgh is blocked at several points between Berwick and Dunbar. At Bournemouth, there are 2 major slips with consequent extensive damage to the track. Near Ayton, due to the collapse of a culvert, a large lake of floodwater has formed. Between Reston and Grant's House, 7 bridges are washed away. The foundations of 4 more between Coburn's Path and Dunbar are undermined. Also in the Grant's House, Coburn's Path area are 2 landslides, 1 washout and 4 serious subsidences under the track. But Anglo-Scottish services were maintained. East Coast traffic was diverted, initially via Carlisle and subsequently via Kelso and St. Boswell's. No less than 7 yawning gaps in the main line were caused by the flooding of the River Eye. Further south, the lake of floodwater was menacing a railway embankment. On the Eyemouth branch line, a sturdy middle pier of this railway viaduct was swept clean away by the thundering onrush of the swollen river. Railway bridges at several spots, bridges which had withstood years of normal wear and tear, were simply demolished, leaving cat's cradles of lines and sleepers suspended across gaping chasms. Even heavy masonry was no proof against the malice of the floodwaters. At Bournemouth, where the main line runs alongside the seashore, a serious slip occurred, leaving the track clinging to the cliffside 150 feet above the beach below. The storm waters massed their gathering weight at any vulnerable spots in railway embankments. Tons of earth were gouged out and spread with wanton abandon over the tracks to a depth of several feet. Here at Grant's House were 2 bridges, each with a 30-foot span solidly constructed of stone. Bridges and foundations are now gone. 8 others were similarly washed away. Slips like this one, with subsidences of 50 feet deep and 200 feet across, were common. Now you have an idea of the magnitude of the task which confronted British Railways. The date, Friday, August the 13th, was significant. To prepare for action, old material was dismantled and sorted. New material was brought up to the front line. British Railways decided to build temporary bridges at once. A start was made also on the permanent bridges before the plant used for the erection of the temporary ones was removed. Engineers making surveys used dinghies loaned specially by the RAF. Tweedmouth was selected as being most suitable for an advanced railhead for materials brought up from the Central Reclamation Depot at Darlington in the northeastern region. At the Darlington Depot, materials from all parts were sorted and forwarded to Tweedmouth as required. Due to the damage to the line at so many points, bridging material had to be delivered to the various sites by road. Most of it was of military type, and the War Office advised on its use. Technical experts and the advanced guard of workers were now in action on various locations. They were accommodated in railway coaches adapted for the purpose. Apart from the railhead at Tweedmouth, dumps were also created on the actual sites of several incidents. Here, materials brought up by road were sorted out, and sections of temporary bridges were pre-assembled on the spot. It was found that by assembling the units at these dumps, the job of reconstruction was helped forward materially. In this work, Army technical experts acted in an advisory capacity. The number of workmen recruited grew rapidly. From the original 200, it soon swelled to 550. At Bournemouth, many of them worked on the job of digging down 26 feet to the underlying rock to prepare a new foundation for the line. 1,200 cubic yards of concrete were needed to make good the ravages of the storm at this point alone. It was here that the track was left perched dangerously on the cliff face 150 feet above the seashore. At a slip in the same vicinity, boring parties worked to ascertain the level of the rock beneath the debris. During these operations, the railway line was slewed away from the slip so that equipment and materials could be brought near to the site by rail without fear of causing a further slip. Ayton, where by reason of a collapsed culvert, an enormous volume of floodwater was impounded on the south side of the railway embankment. This was the site of prolonged activity. Here, the artificial lake was no less than a mile long and 30 feet deep. The urgent need was for the pressure of water to be relieved. To effect this, a trench was cut through the embankment, then in a critical condition, and the level of the trapped floodwater was lowered in easy stages of 2 feet at a time. On the other side of the trench, it poured harmlessly away down the embankment to join the nearby stream. In this manner, about half the impounded water was drained off without difficulty. While all this was going on, an urgent call to the railway executive brought willing help from the Metropolitan Water Board, who came post-haste from London, bringing their pumps and equipment particularly suited to dealing with this sort of situation. The remaining floodwater was pumped away, and the great potential danger to the railway embankment was averted. This formidable job was accomplished in 5 weeks. After an examination of the embankment, mechanical diggers and dumpers were brought up for the next stage of the job. To reform the embankment, soil and material were excavated from the side of the line nearby. By early September, cranes and equipment for construction work on the bridging were in action on the sites. To hold the piles in place while they were being driven home, piling guides were employed effectively. The power for the pile drivers was obtained from steam boilers. Steel sheet piling 25 feet long was erected into coffer dams. Inside these dams, the earth was excavated to a solid foundation. A suitable foundation having been reached, concrete was poured in to form a strong new foundation for the temporary bridging. This work progressed well despite adverse weather conditions. Speed was all imperative still. Activity in all sections was simultaneous. There were no waits, no holds up while something else was being done. This trestling for the temporary bridges was erected in such a way that it would offer no interference when the time came to build the permanent bridges, and would serve to carry the traffic till the permanent bridges were ready. Early October saw a really satisfactory stage of the bridging work develop, where all the energy which had gone into assembling the thousands of small parts into units on the sites and building them up into sturdy trestles reached a culminating point. The Army sergeant instructors put their technical knowledge to practical use on this urgent job of work. With the trestling strongly embedded in its concrete foundations, it was ready to receive the girder spans. Some of these were very large, and they had to be strong too. Strong enough to bear the whole weight of the mainline traffic once the East Coast route was reopened. Cranes were in action again, swinging the girder spans into position. The men themselves were almost surprised at the rapidity with which the temporary bridging went up. A survey of the work was encouraging. Progress was everywhere evident. This is what the base of a finished trestle looked like from the outside of a cofferdam. The view from the inside was quite impressive too. Naturally, the height of the trestling varied at different sites as necessity demanded. At some places, it was as much as 50 feet above the normal level of the water. The problem of washouts was tackled with equal vigor. This one was just north of Penmanshield Tunnel. There were two main features to be considered: the preparation of the site and the construction of the new wall. The site had first to be cleared of debris. Then came the digging of the foundation for the wall. In addition, at this particular site, they had to construct a new culvert under the line, connecting with a drain, which was also relaid for nearly half a mile. Landslides took early priority in order that access to other jobs could be available. Here, just north of Peaseburn, this landslide had covered the track under an avalanche of debris to a depth of approximately 15 feet. Amongst the plant brought up by the contractors from all over the country were drag lines, which speeded operations considerably. At Peaseburn was the first of the two major slips involving serious damage to the railway track and requiring a great deal of work to put matters right. Although restoration work progressed daily, it was difficult to imagine that this line could be pronounced safe for traffic within 3 months of the date of the original slip. The second of the two slips mentioned, this one just north of the previous one at Peaseburn, was similarly tackled. Poor weather conditions hampered the workmen considerably. At some periods, they floundered in 6 inches of mud. To facilitate access to the site here, a rough but efficient road was specially cut. And to consolidate the toe of the embankment, steel sheet piling was used again, effectively preventing erosion by the local stream. Here can be seen the finishing stages of work on the last of the slips further north. Beyond this, there was no damage other than 4 bridges which were made secure by underpinning. So, on October the 21st, 1948, British Railways were able to announce, within 11 weeks of it being damaged by floods and landslides, the Berwick to Dunbar line will be reopened for goods traffic on October the 25th. British Railways had reason to feel pleased with the progress in making good the storm damage. Before the line was reopened to passenger traffic, Sir Eustace Missenden, the chairman of the Railway Executive, accompanied by Mr. J.C.L. Train, member of the Executive for Civil Engineering, came north to inspect the repair work beginning at Bournemouth. Mr. W.Y. Sandeman, civil engineer of the Scottish region, was their guide. At Ayton, scene of some of the severest flooding, contractors' representatives and railway staff were gathered to welcome the party. Among them were several men whose alertness and quick action at the time of the flood undoubtedly did much to avert the possibility of disastrous mishaps to trains still running. On the site of the lake of floodwater, which had been released by cutting through the railway embankment, the engineers had by now made a thorough job of the draining and restoration work, and the embankment was pronounced safe for traffic again. Several of the engineers who had lived on the various sites since the restoration work was begun were also presented. Their first-hand knowledge of the subject was invaluable in explaining the magnitude of the task which was now successfully completed. The lightning inspection tour of the area continued without hitch. More and more evidence of the thoroughness of the work on the temporary structures was apparent on every hand. At the site of the first bridge to be inspected, men were still engaged on the final touches to the repair work. This was one of the bigger jobs in the area. This temporary bridge, the highest of those erected, was of 6 spans. It replaced a stone bridge of 2 spans which had been washed away. As proof of the confidence felt in the excellence of the work done, the party proceeded over the restored bridge to the next scene of operations. Due to the large number of sites, it wasn't possible in a single day to visit and inspect them all, but a good idea of what had been done could be obtained from the train as it passed. At another bridge, this one near Grant's house, Sir Eustace stopped again to meet more engineers and contractors' representatives and to learn from them the details of the work done at this site. His interest prompted him to descend the embankment and see for himself the way the job had been tackled, and a very good job it was too. Grant's house. Here the station master told how the flood waters had engulfed his house and had washed him and his family from their home, a fate suffered by the signalman also. But you can't keep good men down. And with this pleasing reflection in their minds, the party said au revoir to those stalwarts who had overcome their difficulties with such courage. You can't keep good men down. In appreciation of this fact and of the great services rendered to British Railways, several men were invited to a little ceremony. The Chief Regional Officer of the Scottish region, Mr. T.F. Cameron, presented tokens of the Executive's esteem to 20 of the men intimately concerned with operations in the flood area. Men whose good work in warning and stopping trains, in organizing and supervising the diversion of traffic and the restoration of services was of incalculable value to British Railways. The awards took the form of watches and fountain pens, which, just as tokens of their appreciation, the Railway Executive were happy to bestow. Temporary repairs were finished. Floods had been drained away, washouts, slips and landslides had been made good, embankments had been restored, bridges had been repaired where possible and replaced by temporary ones where not possible. 600 men, both contractors and railway staff, had been continuously engaged, using 1,000 tons of steelwork for the trestles and girders, as well as large quantities of steel sheet piling and concrete in the rush to restore the main line services to Edinburgh. With tracks renewed, the line was ready, thoroughly tried and tested, awaiting the official command, the word to carry on. Less than 12 weeks after the catastrophe, which had done so much to wreck our internal rail communications, British Railways announced on Monday, November the 1st, the East Coast mainline route to Scotland is reopened. A justifiably proud announcement. Britain can still show the world how to take it and how to do it.